Dr. Sarah Chin adjusted her lab coat and checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The coffee in her mug had long gone cold, but she barely noticed as she stared at the containment unit humming quietly in the corner of her apartment. 3 months ago, her life had been predictably boring: wake up, teach biology at the university, grade papers, sleep, repeat. Now she was harboring what the government classified as a Class 7 extraterrestrial entity in her spare bedroom. The being called itself ZYX, though Sarah suspected that was just the closest approximation its vocal cords could manage to whatever its real name was. ZYX had crash-landed in the woods behind the university during what officials claimed was a weather balloon incident. Sarah had been collecting soil samples for her botany class when she discovered the smoking crater and the injured creature inside. What struck her first wasn't ZYX's appearance, though its elongated limbs, iridescent blue skin, and large black eyes were certainly noteworthy. It was the way it looked at her. There was intelligence there, curiosity, and something that seemed almost lonely. Against every rational thought in her head, Sarah had helped the wounded being back to her apartment instead of calling the authorities. That decision had led to the most fascinating 3 months of her life. ZYX was a quick learner. Within weeks, it had mastered basic English by absorbing every nature documentary, biology textbook, and scientific journal Sarah owned. Its understanding of Earth's ecosystem was now probably better than most PhD candidates, but there were still gaps in its knowledge that led to amusing misunderstandings. Sarah friend, ZYX called from the living room, its voice carrying that distinctive musical quality that made every word sound like a question. I have been observing the mating displays of the robins outside your dwelling, and I am confused about something. Sarah smiled despite herself. ZYX had an endearing habit of adding friend to her name, as if constantly reminding itself of their relationship. She found the creature in front of her laptop, multiple browser tabs open to various wildlife websites. "What's confusing you this time?" Sarah asked, settling onto the couch beside her unusual roommate. ZYX's presence no longer startled her, though she still marveled at how gracefully it moved despite its 7-foot frame. ZYX gestured at the screen with one of its 4-fingered hands. The male robin builds elaborate nests and sings complex songs to attract a female. The peacock displays its magnificent plumage. Even the simple earthworms you showed me engage in lengthy courtship rituals. But, when I observe humans through your entertainment media, their reproduction behavior seems chaotic and illogical. Sarah nearly choked on her lukewarm coffee. "I'm sorry, what?" "Human mating rituals," ZYX continued matter-of-factly, pulling up a new browser tab. "I have been studying them to better understand your species' social structures, but the data is contradictory. Some sources suggest humans mate for life like wolves, others indicate they change partners frequently like bonobos. Some rituals involve elaborate ceremonies with white clothing and flowers, while others appear to be spontaneous encounters in educational institutions." The screen now displayed a confusing mix of wildlife documentaries, romantic comedies, and what appeared to be the results of a very unfortunate Google search. Sarah's face grew warm as she realized ZYX had somehow stumbled across everything from David Attenborough specials to teen drama series. "Oh no," Sarah muttered, reaching for the laptop. "ZYX, human reproduction it's complicated. And a lot of what you're seeing isn't exactly educational material." ZYX's large eyes blinked slowly, a sign Sarah had learned indicated deep concentration. "But humans are mammals, correct? Your reproductive biology should follow similar patterns to other species I have studied. Yet your cultural practices seem to have no correlation with biological necessity." Sarah found herself in the strange position of trying to explain human sexuality to an alien being that understood the mating habits of thousands of Earth species but was completely baffled by human emotions and social constructs. "You're right that we're mammals," Sarah began carefully, "but humans are unique. Our reproduction involves not just biology, but emotions, social bonds, cultural traditions, and personal choices. It's not as simple as a mating season or displaying bright feathers." ZYX tilted its head, another gesture Sarah found endearing. "This emotional component, it affects the biological process?" "In a way, yes. Humans typically form emotional bonds called love or attraction before mating. These bonds can be temporary or lifelong. They're not necessary for reproduction to occur, but they're important to most humans. Fascinating, ZYX murmured, making notes in the strange, flowing script of its own language. On my world, Kepler 442b, reproduction is a community decision. When our population requires new offspring, the Council of Minds selects optimal genetic combinations and facilitates the joining. Emotions are not considered relevant to the process. Sarah felt a pang of sadness at the clinical nature of ZYX's description. That sounds efficient. It is, ZYX agreed, missing the subtle emotion in her voice. But observing humans has made me question whether efficiency is the optimal goal. Your species has produced remarkable diversity through what appears to be random genetic combinations driven by these emotional attachments. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her colleague Marcus. Coffee tomorrow? There's something I want to ask you. ZYX's attention immediately focused on the device. Is this a mating invitation? I have observed that humans often consume caffeine-based beverages together before engaging in reproduction behaviors. Sarah laughed so hard she nearly fell off the couch. No, ZYX. Marcus is just a friend. Sometimes humans spend time together without any reproductive intentions. But he is male and you are female, correct? And you are both of reproductive age? Yes, but then, why would he invite you to share beverages if not to initiate a courtship sequence? Sarah realized she was about to dive into an even more complex explanation of human friendship, dating, and social interaction. The innocent curiosity in ZYX's eyes reminded her of her first-year biology students, eager to understand but lacking the cultural context to make sense of what they observed. Human relationships are complicated, she said finally. We can be friends with members of the opposite sex without wanting to reproduce with them. We can be attracted to people we don't want to have children with. We can love someone deeply and never have a physical relationship at all. ZYX was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Your species separates emotional bonding from reproductive activity, and reproductive activity from offspring production? Sometimes, yes. And you can form bonds with individuals you cannot reproduce with at all? Sarah nodded, thinking of her gay and lesbian friends, her elderly neighbors who had been together for 50 years, her students who dated people of different species. Well, not literally, but the concept would be familiar to ZYX soon enough. This is perhaps the most complex reproductive strategy one have encountered, ZYX said with what sounded like admiration. Your species has essentially separated all the components that other animals combine into a single biological imperative. I suppose we have, Sarah agreed. Is that strange from your perspective? ZYX's large eyes seemed to focus on something far beyond the apartment walls. On my world, reproduction serves the species. Individuals are selected for optimal genetic contribution, paired for the duration of offspring development, then released to pursue their chosen functions. It is logical, efficient, and beneficial to our collective survival. But do you enjoy it? Are you happy with that system? Enjoyment and happiness are concepts I am still learning to understand, ZYX admitted. My people experience satisfaction when we fulfill our roles effectively. We feel contentment when the collective thrives. But this thing you call happiness, this emotional state that seems to exist independent of function or necessity, this is foreign to me. Sarah felt a surge of empathy for her alien friend. Would you like to understand it better? Human emotions and relationships, I mean? ZYX turned its full attention to her, and Sarah was struck again by the depth of intelligence in those black eyes. I believe understanding your emotional systems would help me better comprehend your species. You have shown me kindness that served no logical purpose, sheltering me, teaching me, risking your own safety for my benefit. This behavior patterns does not align with any survival strategy one recognize. That's because it wasn't about survival, Sarah explained. I helped you because I wanted to. Because it felt right. Because I was curious about you and concerned for your well-being. You felt emotions toward me despite us being different species with no possibility of reproduction? Of course. Humans can form emotional bonds with anything other humans, animals, even inanimate objects sometimes. We're social creatures. We connect. ZYX stood and walked to the window, its movements flowing like water. Outside, the campus was alive with students heading to evening classes, couples walking hand in hand, friends laughing together as they crossed the quad. I have been observing them, ZYX said quietly. The young humans. They engage in such complex social dances. They gather in groups, separate into pairs, regroup, separate again. They touch each other frequently, hands, shoulders, faces, in ways that seem to serve no practical purpose. Those touches are forms of communication, Sarah explained, joining ZYX at the window. They express affection, comfort, attraction, friendship. Physical contact releases hormones that make us feel good and strengthen our bonds with each other. Your bodies produce chemicals that reinforce social connections? Exactly. Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, they're like natural drugs that reward us for forming relationships. ZYX turned to look at her directly. Is this why you helped me? Your biochemistry compelled you to form a social bond? Sarah considered the question seriously. Maybe partly. But I also made a choice. Even if my brain chemistry encouraged kindness, I could have chosen to ignore those feelings and call the authorities instead. Choice, ZYX repeated slowly. Another concept that appears central to human behavior. You are driven by biology but not controlled by it. Right. We have instincts and impulses, but we can decide whether to follow them. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the students below. Sarah found herself wondering what ZYX's world looked like, whether its people ever stood at windows watching each other with curiosity and fondness. Sarah friend, ZYX said eventually, would you help me understand human reproduction more completely? Not just the biological mechanics, which I can research, but the emotional and social components that make your species unique? Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. That's a pretty broad topic. What specifically do you want to know? Everything, ZYX said simply. How do humans choose their mates? What role do emotions play in the process? How do you balance individual desires with species survival? Why do some humans never reproduce at all, yet still form these powerful bonds you call love? The questions hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah realized that explaining human sexuality and relationships to an alien being might force her to examine her own assumptions about love, attraction, and connection. It was both daunting and oddly exciting. All right, she said finally. But this is going to take more than one evening. Human relationships are messy, contradictory, and often completely irrational. I find the irrational aspects of human behavior the most intriguing, ZYX admitted. On my world, irrationality is seen as a flaw to be corrected. But I am beginning to suspect it may be one of your species' greatest strengths. Sarah smiled at that. You might be right. Some of humanity's best achievements have come from people who ignored logic and followed their hearts instead. As if summoned by her words, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from her sister. Emergency. Need your advice. I think I'm falling in love with someone completely wrong for me. ZYX read the message over her shoulder. Is this a common occurrence? Humans developing emotional attachments to unsuitable mates? Incredibly common, Sarah laughed. In fact, falling for the wrong person is practically a rite of passage. And this is considered normal behavior? Unfortunately, yes. ZYX made another note in its alien script. Your sister is requesting guidance in navigating an illogical emotional situation? Basically. And you will provide this guidance based on your own experience with illogical emotional situations? Sarah paused, realizing that her dating history was indeed a series of questionable decisions and learning experiences. I suppose I will. Fascinating, ZYX murmured. Humans seek advice about irrationality from other humans who admit to being equally irrational. When you put it like that, it does sound pretty ridiculous, Sarah admitted. Not ridiculous, ZYX corrected. Remarkable. Your species has developed social support systems for managing the chaos of emotional bonding. You help each other navigate uncertainty and complexity through shared experience and empathy. Sarah looked at her alien roommate with new appreciation. Sometimes ZYX's outside perspective highlighted beautiful aspects of humanity that she'd never considered before. So, she said, settling back onto the couch, where do you want to start with your education in human romance? ZYX joined her, pulling the laptop closer. Perhaps with the basics. How do humans typically meet potential mates in your current cultural context? Sarah opened a new browser tab, mentally preparing herself for what was sure to be an enlightening conversation. Well, there are dating apps, social events, work relationships, chance encounters, though I should probably explain the concept of dating first. Dating? It's like practice mating rituals. Humans go on dates to determine compatibility before deciding whether to pursue a relationship. ZYX's eyes widened. You engage in multiple courtship sequences with different individuals simultaneously? Sometimes, yes. It's considered normal to date several people before choosing one for a serious relationship. And the individuals you do not choose? Usually we remain friends, or we just go our separate ways. ZYX was quiet for a moment. So humans practice reproduction behaviors without reproducing, form temporary bonds that may become permanent, and maintain friendly relationships with former potential mates? That's actually a pretty accurate summary. Your species has created an entire social ecosystem around reproduction that operates independently of actual reproductive necessity. Sarah had never thought of dating culture in quite those terms, but ZYX was right. Humans had essentially gamified the process of finding a life partner, turning it into a complex social activity with its own rules, customs, and expectations. I think, she said slowly, this is going to be a much more interesting conversation than I expected. ZYX's expression brightened, another emotion it had learned from watching humans. I am eager to begin. But, first, perhaps you should respond to your sister's message? I would like to observe a real-time example of humans providing relationship guidance. Sarah looked at her phone, then at ZYX, then back at her phone. Her sister Emma was probably sitting somewhere having a minor crisis about whatever inappropriate person had caught her attention this time. And here Sarah was, about to explain human relationship dynamics to an alien being who found the entire concept both baffling and fascinating. Her life had definitely gotten more complicated since ZYX arrived. But, as she began typing a response to her sister, she realized it had also gotten infinitely more interesting. Emma, she typed, tell me everything. And, I mean everything. I'm doing research on human mating behaviors and could use a case study. She paused, imagining her sister's reaction to that message, then added, long story. Call me. ZYX watched her type with intense concentration. You use humor to deflect emotional discomfort while still offering genuine support? Something like that. And, your sister will understand this communication strategy? She's known me for 28 years. She'll figure it out. Within seconds, her phone was ringing. Sarah looked at ZYX, who nodded encouragingly. Here we go, Sarah said, answering the call. Emma? You're on speaker. I have a friend here who's interested in learning about human relationships. Since when do you have friends who don't know about relationships? Emma's voice crackled through the phone speaker. Wait, is this about that mysterious research project you've been working on? Sarah and ZYX exchanged glances. Her family knew she was involved in some kind of classified research but had no idea about ZYX's existence. Something like that, Sarah said carefully. So tell me about this person you're falling for. Oh, Sarah, Emma sighed dramatically. He's completely wrong for me in every way. He's a travel blogger who owns nothing but a backpack and a laptop. He thinks commitment is a dirty word. He's allergic to cats, and you know how I feel about my cats. And he's absolutely gorgeous and charming and makes me laugh until my sides hurt. ZYX leaned closer to the phone, fascination written across its features. So what's the problem? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. I want him to stay, Emma said quietly. I want him to give up traveling and move in with me and my 3 cats and become the kind of person who plans for the future. I want to change everything about his lifestyle to match mine. And, you know that's not realistic? I know it's completely unfair and probably impossible. But I can't seem to stop wanting it anyway. ZYX made rapid notes as Emma talked. Sarah could practically see the questions forming in its mind. How long have you known him? Sarah asked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Emma. I know. It's ridiculous. But, Sarah, when I'm with him, I feel like I'm more myself than I've ever been. Does that make any sense? Sarah glanced at ZYX, who was listening with the intensity of a researcher observing a completely new phenomenon. It makes perfect sense, Sarah said softly. And it's also exactly why this is complicated. What should I do? Before Sarah could answer, ZYX gestured for her attention and pointed to its notes. Written in English below the alien script was a single word, why? Sarah understood immediately. From ZYX's perspective, Emma's situation made no logical sense. She was emotionally attached to someone whose lifestyle and goals were incompatible with hers. She wanted to change fundamental aspects of his personality, and she was considering major life decisions based on 3 weeks of interaction. Emma, Sarah said, can I ask you something? Why do you want him to change? Why not just enjoy the connection you have while it lasts? Because. Emma paused, clearly struggling with the question. Because when something feels this good, you want it to be permanent. You want to build something lasting with it. ZYX wrote frantically, then showed Sarah another note. Humans convert temporary pleasure into permanence desires? But what if the thing you're trying to make permanent only feels good because it's temporary? Sarah asked, addressing both her sister and her alien roommate. What if his free spirit and spontaneity are part of what attracts you, and asking him to give those up would destroy what you love about him? Silence stretched across the phone connection. Finally, Emma laughed, but it sounded more sad than amused. God, you're right. I'm trying to cage a bird because I like how it sings. ZYX's eyes widened at the metaphor. It quickly wrote, humans understand that changing desired traits eliminates the desire, yet attempt to change them anyway? So what do I do? Emma asked. Just enjoy it and prepare for heartbreak? Sarah looked at ZYX, who was watching her with expectant curiosity. How did you explain to an alien or to a heartbroken sister that humans often chose emotional pain over logical solutions? Maybe, Sarah said slowly, you could try just being honest with him about how you feel. Not asking him to change, but sharing what you're experiencing. See if there's any way to build something together that honors both of your needs. And if there isn't? Then, you'll have had 3 weeks of feeling more like yourself than ever before. That's not nothing, Emma. Another long pause. When did you get so wise about relationships? Last I checked, you hadn't been on a date in 6 months. Sarah felt her face flush as ZYX looked at her with obvious interest. I've been expanding my perspective lately. Well, your mysterious research project seems to be good for you. Thanks, sis. I'm going to go call Marcus and be embarrassingly honest about my feelings. Wait, Marcus? Sarah sat up straighter. Marcus as in my colleague Marcus? Oh, right. Forgot to mention that part. He's the travel blogger. Small world, right? He said he knows you from work. Sarah's mind reeled. Marcus, who had texted earlier about coffee. Marcus, who she'd assured ZYX was just a friend. Marcus, who was apparently the completely inappropriate man her sister was falling for. Emma, Sarah said slowly, when you said he was gorgeous and charming. 6'2", dark hair, those green eyes that make you forget your own name, and a smile that should be classified as a weapon of mass destruction? ZYX was watching Sarah's face intently, no doubt cataloging her changing expressions as she processed this information. Yeah, Sarah said faintly. That's Marcus. Do you have a problem with me dating him? I know he's your colleague, but no problem, Sarah said quickly. I'm just surprised. And maybe a little concerned about the workplace dynamics if things go badly. Sarah Chen, are you jealous? Emma's voice carried a teasing note that made Sarah's stomach flip. Don't be ridiculous. Marcus and I are just friends. But, even as she said it, Sarah realized she wasn't entirely sure that was true. She'd always enjoyed talking with Marcus, looked forward to their coffee meetings, felt a little flutter of excitement when she saw his name on her phone. She'd attributed those feelings to friendship, but, listening to Emma describe her attraction to him, Sarah wondered if she'd been deceiving herself. ZYX made another note: humans can experience emotions without recognizing them? I should go, Emma said. Wish me luck with my impossible romance. Good luck, Sarah said, meaning it despite her own confused feelings. And, Emma? Whatever happens, don't let fear keep you from being honest about what you want. Love you too, sis. After Emma hung up, Sarah and ZYX sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, ZYX spoke. You experienced emotional discomfort when learning of your sister's attachment to Marcus' colleague? Sarah sighed. I think I might have. But, you stated that Marcus was only a friend? I believe that was true. Humans can deceive themselves about their own emotions? Apparently so. ZYX made several more notes. This is fascinating. Your species not only experiences complex emotions but can simultaneously experience and deny them. Your sister felt attraction while knowing it was impractical. You felt attraction while categorizing it as friendship. It's one of our less helpful traits, Sarah admitted. Or perhaps, ZYX suggested, it allows you to maintain social bonds even when romantic attachments would be disruptive. You preserved your friendship with Marcus by not acknowledging romantic feelings. Sarah looked at her alien roommate with surprise. You think I was unconsciously protecting our working relationship? It seems possible. Your species appears to have developed psychological mechanisms for managing the chaos of emotional bonding. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with another message from Marcus. Actually, I have something important to discuss. Could we meet tonight instead? There's something I need to tell you about Emma. Sarah stared at the message, then showed it to ZYX. The situation becomes more complex, ZYX observed. Much more complex, Sarah agreed. Will you meet with him? Sarah considered the question. A few hours ago, coffee with Marcus would have been a simple, pleasant evening with a friend. Now it carried the weight of her sister's feelings, her own newly acknowledged emotions, and the strange pressure of being observed by an alien anthropologist. Yes, she said finally. I think I need to understand what's happening here. ZYX tilted its head thoughtfully. May I ask you to observe your own emotional responses during this interaction? For research purposes? You want me to analyze my own feelings while I'm having them? If possible. I am curious whether conscious observation affects the experience of emotions. Sarah laughed despite the complexity of her situation. ZYX, you're about to turn my personal life into a science experiment. Is that problematic? Probably. But, at this point, I think scientific observation might be the only way I'm going to make sense of any of this. She picked up her phone to respond to Marcus, then paused. Before I do this, can I ask you something? Of course. On your world, do people ever wish they could experience emotions like humans do? The chaos and irrationality and beautiful mess of it all? ZYX was quiet for a long moment. Before coming to Earth, such a question would have been incomprehensible to me. Emotion seemed like a malfunction, a failure of logical processing. And, now I wonder if perhaps logic alone is the malfunction. Your species has created art, music, literature, scientific discoveries, all driven by these emotional experiences that my people would consider irrelevant. You form bonds that transcend biology, make choices that defy survival instincts, find joy in concepts that serve no practical purpose. ZYX paused, looking out the window at the campus below where students were living their complicated, emotional human lives. I think, it said slowly, that I am beginning to understand why your species has achieved things mine never considered possible. Your irrationality may be a feature, not a bug. Sarah smiled at ZYX's use of programming terminology. I think you're learning more about humanity than either of us expected. And, I suspect your education in human emotions is about to become much more practical than theoretical. Sarah looked at her phone, at Marcus's message, at the evening ahead of her filled with unknown complications and discoveries. Here goes nothing, she said, typing her response to Marcus. I'll meet you at the usual cafe in an hour. As she hit send, Sarah realized that her simple life as a biology professor was officially over. Between her alien roommate's research project and her own confused feelings about Marcus and Emma's situation, she was about to dive headfirst into the messy, irrational, beautiful complexity of human relationships. And, for the first time in months, she felt genuinely excited about what might happen next. The evening air carried the scent of autumn leaves and coffee as Sarah walked across campus toward her meeting with Marcus. Behind her apartment window, ZYX watched her progress with the focused attention of a scientist observing a critical experiment. The alien had insisted on monitoring her emotional responses remotely, though how exactly it planned to do that remained unclear. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from ZYX. Remember to observe your physiological responses. Heart rate, breathing patterns, skin temperature changes. She almost laughed. Leave it to an alien to turn her personal crisis into a clinical study. But, as she approached the familiar cafe where she and Marcus had shared dozens of casual conversations, Sarah found herself genuinely curious about her own reactions. Her heart was definitely beating faster, and she felt that flutter of nervous energy that came with uncertainty. Marcus was already there when she arrived, sitting at their usual table by the window. But something was different about him tonight. He seemed tense, almost agitated, running his hands through his dark hair in a gesture she'd never seen before. When he looked up and saw her, his expression was a mixture of relief and something that might have been guilt. Sarah, thanks for meeting me, he said, standing to greet her. I wasn't sure you'd come after everything. After everything? Sarah slid into the seat across from him, studying his face. Marcus, what's going on? He sat back down heavily, avoiding her eyes. I need to tell you something about Emma. About me and Emma. Sarah felt a strange twist in her stomach. I already know you're seeing my sister. She called me earlier, completely smitten and convinced you're all wrong for each other. Marcus's head snapped up. She told you about us? She told me about some travel blogger who's making her question her entire life plan. I put two and two together when she mentioned your name. Sarah paused, watching his face. What I don't understand is why you're acting like you've committed some terrible crime. Because, Marcus said quietly, I started seeing Emma to get close to you. The words hung in the air between them like a confession. Sarah felt her breath catch, that sharp intake of surprise that ZYX would probably find fascinating to analyze. What? Marcus leaned forward, his green eyes intense. Sarah, I've been trying to ask you out for months. Every time we have coffee, every departmental meeting, every casual conversation, I keep looking for an opening, some sign that you might be interested in something more than friendship. Sarah's mind reeled. But, you never. You never indicated. Because you're so professional, so focused on maintaining appropriate boundaries. I convinced myself you weren't interested. Marcus ran his hands through his hair again. Then, I met Emma at that conference 3 weeks ago. She's your sister, she's beautiful, she's available, and she seemed like maybe she could help me understand what I was doing wrong with you. So you started dating my sister as research? Sarah couldn't keep the disbelief out of her voice. God, when you say it like that, it sounds horrible. Marcus looked genuinely miserable. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I thought maybe if I spent time with Emma, I could figure out how to talk to you. But, then. Then, what? Then, I realized Emma is amazing in her own right. She's funny and passionate and completely different from you in all the best ways. And she's falling for me while I'm still hung up on her sister. Marcus met Sarah's eyes. I'm a complete disaster, aren't I? Sarah's phone buzzed with another message from ZYX. Facial expression suggests confusion and emotional conflict. Heart rate elevated? She ignored it, focusing on Marcus's tortured expression. Marcus, this is fucked up? I was going to say complicated, but that works too. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession settling between them. Sarah found herself analyzing her own reactions just as ZYX had requested. Surprise, yes. Anger? Maybe a little, on Emma's behalf. But, underneath those surface emotions was something else, a warm flutter of possibility that she wasn't quite ready to examine. Can I ask you something? Sarah said finally. What made you think I wasn't interested? Marcus gave her a look that was part disbelief, part frustration. Sarah, you're the most professional person I've ever met. Every conversation we have is about work or research or academic topics. You never flirt, never give any indication that you see me as anything other than a colleague. Because I thought you weren't interested, Sarah said quietly. It was Marcus's turn to look surprised. What? You're charming and gorgeous and you travel the world writing about exotic places. I'm a biology professor who spends her free time categorizing plant specimens. I never imagined you'd see me as anything more than a friend. Marcus stared at her. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. Sarah, you're brilliant. You light up when you talk about your research, you have this dry sense of humor that catches me off guard every time, and you're beautiful in this understated way that's completely captivating. I've been trying to work up the courage to ask you out since the day we met. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. Her phone buzzed again, physiological responses consistent with attraction and surprise. Fascinating. So we've spent months being interested in each other while both convinced the other person wasn't interested? Apparently, Marcus said with a rueful smile. And now I've complicated everything by dating your sister, who is genuinely falling for you, while I'm sitting here confessing my feelings for you. Sarah leaned back in her chair, trying to process the situation. This is like something out of a soap opera. A really bad soap opera, Marcus agreed. The kind where everyone makes terrible decisions and nobody communicates until it's too late. What are you going to do about Emma? Marcus's expression grew serious. I have to be honest with her. She deserves to know that my feelings are complicated, that I got involved with her for the wrong reasons. Even though she's falling for you? Especially because she's falling for me. Sarah, your sister is incredible. In another universe where I wasn't already hung up on you, I could absolutely fall for her. But I can't build something real with her while I'm harboring feelings for someone else. Sarah admired his honesty, even as her heart ached for her sister. She's going to be hurt. I know. And I hate that. But staying with her while wanting you would hurt her more in the long run. Her phone buzzed. Human males demonstrate protective behavior toward females they are not mating with? Sarah glanced at the message, struck by ZYX's observation. Marcus was essentially sacrificing his own comfort and Emma's short-term happiness to protect her from greater future pain. It was exactly the kind of complex emotional reasoning that fascinated her alien roommate. Marcus, she said slowly, can I ask you something else? If Emma wasn't my sister, if there wasn't this family connection complicating things, what would you do? He considered the question seriously. If I was dating someone I cared about but wasn't in love with, and I met someone I thought I could fall in love with, I'd probably end the first relationship and pursue the second one. It wouldn't be comfortable, but it would be honest. But, because it's Emma. Because it's Emma, I feel like I'd betrayed both of you. I used her to get close to you, and I've put you in an impossible position with your sister. Sarah watched Marcus struggle with his guilt and realized something important. You know what I think? What? I think you're being too hard on yourself. Yes, you made some questionable decisions, but you didn't set out to hurt anyone. You were trying to figure out how to navigate feelings you didn't know how to express. Marcus looked skeptical. That's very generous of you. It's realistic. Emotions make people do stupid things sometimes. The question is what you do once you recognize the mess you've created. Her phone buzzed again. Humans forgive poor decisions driven by emotional confusion? So what do I do? Marcus asked. Sarah thought about ZYX's research into human relationships, about her sister's confession of wanting the impossible, about her own months of unacknowledged feelings. The situation was complicated, messy, and completely irrational, everything that made human relationships both wonderful and terrible. You're going to call Emma tonight, she said finally. You're going to tell her the truth, all of it. That you started seeing her for the wrong reasons, that your feelings are complicated, and that you care about her too much to continue under false pretenses. And then? Then, you let her decide what she wants to do with that information. Marcus nodded slowly. And what about us? Sarah felt her heart skip. What about us? Sarah, if I'm being completely honest with Emma, I need to be honest with you too. I want to take you to dinner. I want to hear about your research and your terrible day and your random thoughts about everything and nothing. I want to figure out if this thing between us is real or just months of built-up curiosity. The flutter in Sarah's chest intensified. Even if it complicates things with Emma? Especially because it complicates things with Emma. She deserves a brother-in-law who's genuinely excited about family gatherings, not someone who's going to spend every holiday wondering what if. Sarah's phone buzzed. Mail demonstrates long-term planning considerations in mate selection? This time Sarah couldn't help but smile. Trust ZYX to reduce Marcus's romantic declaration to an evolutionary biology observation. You're assuming Emma would be okay with us dating after you break up with her, Sarah pointed out. I'm assuming Emma wants both of us to be happy, even if it takes her some time to get there. Your sister struck me as someone who values honesty and authenticity above convenience. Sarah considered this. Emma had always been fiercely independent and surprisingly pragmatic about relationships. She'd been hurt before, but she'd also been the first to admit when something wasn't working and move on with grace. She might surprise you, Sarah conceded. Emma's tougher than she looks, and she's never been one to hold grudges about romantic things that don't work out. So is that a yes to dinner? Sarah looked at Marcus across the small table, this man who had been her friend and colleague for months, who had dated her sister while harboring feelings for her, who was now sitting there looking nervous and hopeful and completely human in his imperfect decision-making. Yes, she said. But not until after you talk to Emma. I won't go behind my sister's back, even if the situation is already complicated. Marcus's smile was brilliant. Fair enough. And, Sarah? Yeah? Thank you for being understanding about this mess. I was terrified you'd think I was some kind of manipulative asshole. You're not manipulative, Sarah said. You're just human. We're all just stumbling around trying to figure out how to connect with each other without screwing everything up. Her phone buzzed. Humans accept relationship complexity as normal rather than problematic? Sarah glanced at the message and realized ZYX had been documenting the entire evening's emotional revelations. Tomorrow she'd have to explain to an alien being how two people could be attracted to each other for months without acknowledging it, how someone could date one person while having feelings for another, and how families could navigate romantic complications without destroying their relationships. But, right now, she was content to sit across from Marcus and feel that warm flutter of possibility that came with new beginnings. I should head home, she said eventually. I have a research project waiting for me. The mysterious project you mentioned to Emma? Sarah thought about ZYX, probably sitting by her window taking notes on human courtship behaviors, eager to analyze every detail of her interaction with Marcus. Something like that. As they walked out of the cafe together, Marcus caught her hand briefly. Sarah? Whatever happens with Emma, I'm glad I finally told you how I feel. Me too, she said, and meant it. The walk back to her apartment gave Sarah time to process everything that had happened. Her phone remained mercifully quiet. Apparently ZYX had gathered enough data for one evening. But, as she climbed the stairs to her front door, she found herself genuinely excited to share the evening's developments with her alien roommate. She found ZYX exactly where she'd expected, sitting by the living room window with its laptop open, pages of notes in both English and its own flowing script spread across the coffee table. "Welcome back, Sarah friend," ZYX said without looking up from its notes. "I have many questions." "I bet you do." Sarah collapsed onto the couch beside her roommate. "What did you think of tonight's drama?" "I found it illuminating," ZYX said, finally, meeting her eyes. "Your species demonstrates remarkable tolerance for emotional complexity. On my world, Marcus's behavior would be considered deeply problematic, pursuing one individual while interested in another, using deception in courtship strategies." "Marcus wasn't trying to deceive anyone," Sarah protested. "He was confused about his own feelings and made some poor choices while trying to figure things out." "Yes, this is what I find fascinating," ZYX continued. "Humans appear to understand that emotions can override logical decision-making and extend forgiveness for behaviors that result from emotional confusion." Sarah considered this. "I guess we do. We know that feelings are complicated and that people don't always handle them well. Most of us have done stupid things because we were scared or confused or didn't understand what we wanted. You demonstrate empathy for emotional imperfection." "Something like that." ZYX made several notes. "And Marcus's decision to end his relationship with Emma to pursue you, this is considered ethical?" "It's considered honest. He could have continued dating Emma while harboring feelings for me, but that would have been unfair to everyone involved." "So humans prioritize emotional authenticity over maintaining stable pair bonds?" Sarah paused, struck by the complexity of the question. "Not always. Sometimes people stay in relationships that aren't perfect because they value stability or have made commitments they want to honor. But, in this case, Marcus and Emma have only been together for 3 weeks. They haven't made any long-term promises to each other." "The duration of the relationship affects the ethical obligations?" "To some extent, yes. A 3-week relationship has different expectations than a 3-year marriage." ZYX wrote rapidly. "Your species has developed complex social contracts around romantic relationships that scale with time and investment?" "Exactly. Dating someone casually for a few weeks doesn't carry the same obligations as living together or getting married or having children together." "And these contracts are mostly unspoken?" Sarah laughed. "That's where a lot of the drama comes from. People often have different assumptions about what their relationship means and what they owe each other." "Like your months of unacknowledged mutual attraction with Marcus?" "Like that. We both made assumptions about the other person's feelings instead of just asking directly. Communication appears to be both central to human relationships and surprisingly difficult for your species." "You're not wrong," Sarah admitted. "We're social creatures who are surprisingly bad at expressing our actual thoughts and feelings clearly." ZYX tilted its head thoughtfully. "Perhaps this difficulty serves an evolutionary purpose? Indirect communication allows for face-saving rejection, gradual relationship development, and emotional protection?" Sarah stared at her alien roommate. "That's actually a really insightful observation. Direct communication about feelings can be risky. If someone rejects you outright, it's painful and potentially damaging to your social standing. But if you hint at interest and they don't respond, you can pretend you were just being friendly." "Yes. And gradual escalation allows both parties to assess compatibility without making large emotional investments prematurely." ZYX, "I think you might understand human dating better than most humans do." ZYX's expression brightened. "I find your relationship dynamics endlessly fascinating. The interplay between biology, emotion, social convention, and individual choice creates such complex behavioral patterns." Sarah's phone rang, interrupting their discussion. Emma's name flashed on the screen. "Speaking of complex behavioral patterns," Sarah murmured, then answered. Hey, Sarah, I need to tell you something, Emma said without preamble. Her voice sounded strange, not upset exactly, but thoughtful in a way that was unusual for her impulsive sister. What's going on? I just got off the phone with Marcus. He told me, well, everything. About you, about why he started seeing me, about his feelings being complicated. Sarah glanced at ZYX, who was listening with obvious interest. How are you handling that? Better than I expected, honestly. I mean, I'm disappointed because I really did fall for him. But, Sarah, I also respect the hell out of him for being honest with me. Really? Really? Do you know how many guys would have just kept dating me while pining for you? He could have had his cake and eaten it too, but instead he chose to have an uncomfortable conversation because it was the right thing to do. Sarah felt a surge of affection for her sister. That's very mature of you. Don't sound so surprised, Emma laughed. I may be impulsive, but I'm not stupid. Marcus was honest with me about something that was difficult to admit. That tells me he's a good person, even if he's not my person. And you're okay with him being interested in me? Sarah, I'm 26 years old. I've had other relationships, and I'll have more relationships. But you're my sister forever. If Marcus makes you happy, then I want you to go for it. ZYX was writing furiously, clearly fascinated by this turn of events. Emma, are you sure? Because if this is going to make family gatherings awkward. Family gatherings are already awkward. Remember last Christmas when Dad tried to explain cryptocurrency to Grandma for 3 hours? Sarah laughed despite herself. That was pretty painful. Besides, Emma continued, Marcus was right about one thing. I deserve someone who's completely excited about being with me, not someone who's settling for me because they can't have who they really want. You're amazing, you know that? I do know that. And now Marcus knows that, and hopefully, someday I'll find someone else who knows that too. Emma paused. But, Sarah? Yeah? I want details. Like, all the details. How long have you been interested in him? Why didn't you ever say anything? When did you figure out your feelings? Sarah looked at ZYX, who nodded encouragingly. It's complicated. It always is with our family. Start talking. For the next hour, Sarah found herself explaining the evening's revelations to both her sister and her alien roommate. Emma asked practical questions about timing and feelings, while ZYX took notes on family dynamics and emotional processing. It was surreal and oddly comforting to have such different perspectives on the same situation. So Marcus is going to call you tomorrow to set up a proper date? Emma asked eventually. That's the plan. And you're excited about it? Sarah glanced at ZYX, who was watching her with obvious curiosity. Yeah, I am. Nervous but excited. Good. You deserve someone who appreciates how wonderful you are. After Emma hung up, Sarah and ZYX sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Your sister demonstrated remarkable emotional maturity, ZYX said finally. She did. Emma's always been good at adapting to changed circumstances. And she prioritized family relationships over romantic disappointment? She prioritized honesty and authenticity. Emma would rather have a brief, honest connection with someone than a longer relationship built on false pretenses. ZYX made more notes. Humans can distinguish between romantic attachment and romantic compatibility? Sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And family bonds typically supersede romantic bonds in terms of long-term priority? Sarah considered this. It depends on the family and the romantic relationship. But, in general, yes. Most people expect their family relationships to last longer than their romantic ones, at least statistically. Because family bonds are involuntary while romantic bonds are chosen? Partly. But also because family relationships aren't usually dependent on continued attraction or compatibility. You love your family even when they annoy you or make choices you don't understand.
Like harboring alien beings in your apartment? Sarah looked at ZYX with surprise, then smiled. Exactly like that.
I am beginning to understand why humans value these emotional connections so highly, ZYX said quietly. The stability of unconditional bonds allows for emotional risk-taking in other relationships.
How so? You can afford to be vulnerable in romantic relationships because you have family support to fall back on.
Emma can encourage you to pursue Marcus because she knows your sister bond will survive regardless of how the romance develops.
Sarah felt a wave of appreciation for her alien friend's insight. That's exactly right. Family gives you the security to take emotional chances with other people.
Your species has created a social safety net for emotional risk.
I never thought of it that way, but, yes. ZYX was quiet for a long moment, its large eyes reflecting the lamplight.
On my world, individuals are supported by the collective, but emotional bonds are discouraged as potentially destabilizing.
We have security but no intimacy. Do you think you're missing something? After observing your evening, I am certain we are missing something.
The complexity of your emotional connections creates challenges, yes, but also richness. Your relationships with Marcus and Emma tonight demonstrated creativity, growth, forgiveness, and hope.
These are not functions we have optimized for on Kepler 442b. Sarah felt a pang of sadness for ZYX's species. Maybe that's something you could bring back to your people when you return home? ZYX turned to look directly at her.
I am not certain I wish to return home, Sarah friend.
The quiet admission hung in the air between them.
Sarah realized that while she'd been learning about human relationships from an alien perspective, ZYX had been learning about relationship possibilities it had never imagined.
What would you do instead? She asked gently.
I would like to continue observing human relationships. Your species is conducting fascinating experiments in emotional connection that could benefit many worlds.
You want to become a relationship researcher?
I want to understand how beings can maintain individual identity while forming deep emotional bonds with others. This seems to be humanity's greatest achievement.
Sarah smiled at her alien roommate.
Well, you've got plenty of material to work with.
My dating life alone could keep you busy for months. Indeed, ZYX agreed.
And, tomorrow, when Marcus calls to arrange your first official date, I will have the opportunity to observe the early stages of human courtship in real time.
As long as you promise not to offer commentary during the actual date.
I make no such promises, ZYX said with what Sarah had learned was its version of a mischievous smile.
This research is too important for casual observation. Sarah laughed, shaking her head.
Tomorrow she would go on her first date with Marcus, navigating the transition from colleagues to potential partners while her alien roommate documented every awkward moment for science. It should have felt overwhelming, but, instead, she found herself looking forward to the adventure. After all, if ZYX was right about humans being uniquely gifted at forming emotional connections, then, maybe her messy, complicated love life was actually something to be proud of rather than embarrassed about.
ZYX, she said as they prepared to head to their respective bedrooms. Yes, Sarah friend? Thank you for helping me understand tonight. Your questions made me think about things differently.
Thank you for allowing me to observe your emotional processes. I have learned more about relationships in this one evening than in months of studying your entertainment media.
What's the most important thing you learned? ZYX considered the question carefully.
That humans choose emotional complexity over emotional simplicity because the complexity creates possibilities for connection that simplicity cannot achieve.
Sarah nodded. That's probably the best summary of human relationships I've ever heard.
As she headed to bed, Sarah reflected on the evening's revelations. Tomorrow would bring new complications and possibilities, but tonight she felt grateful for the strange circumstances that had brought both Marcus's honesty and ZYX's perspective into her life. Her phone buzzed one final time with a message from Marcus, just finished talking with Emma. She's incredible, and she's right, you deserve someone who's completely excited about being with you. I can't wait to show you how excited I am.
Sweet dreams, Sarah.
Sarah smiled, tucked her phone away, and went to sleep feeling optimistic about the beautiful messiness of human connection. 3 months after Marcus's confession, Sarah's apartment had transformed into an unofficial research center for interspecies relationship studies. ZYX had covered one wall with detailed charts tracking human emotional patterns, courtship behaviors, and what it termed bonding probability matrices. The aliens' fascination with human reproduction had evolved into something far more sophisticated, a comprehensive analysis of how emotional connections formed, developed, and sustained themselves across different relationship types. Sarah found this slightly embarrassing and completely endearing. Sarah's friend, ZYX, called from the living room, where it was reviewing footage from its latest observation session. "I need clarification about something Marcus said during your dinner last evening." Sarah looked up from her laptop, where she was grading papers on plant reproductive strategies. The irony of teaching botanical reproduction while living with an alien studying human reproduction was not lost on her. "What did he say?" "He stated that he loves you, but then immediately appeared distressed and attempted to retract the statement." "Why would humans express true emotions and then deny them?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm at the memory. Last night had been wonderful, a quiet dinner at Marcus's apartment, easy conversation, the comfortable intimacy that had developed between them over the past few months. Then, Marcus had said those 3 words with such sincerity that her heart had skipped, only to immediately backtrack with, I think I'm falling for you, I don't want to rush things, forget I said that." "It's complicated," Sarah said, which had become her standard response to ZYX's relationship questions. "Everything about human bonding appears to be complicated," ZYX observed. "But this particular behavior pattern suggests internal conflict between emotional truth and social protocol." "Marcus is worried about moving too fast," Sarah explained. "We only started dating 3 months ago, and we're still figuring things out. Saying I love you feels like a big step." "But he does love you?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "I think he might. And I think I might love him too. But admitting that out loud feels significant." ZYX tilted its head thoughtfully. "You are both experiencing the emotion but reluctant to acknowledge it officially?" "Something like that." "Why?" Sarah set down her pen and gave ZYX her full attention. After months of these conversations, she'd learned that the aliens' questions often revealed insights she hadn't considered. "Because saying I love you changes the relationship," she said slowly. "It implies commitment, future planning, emotional vulnerability. Once you've said it, you can't take it back. And this change would be undesirable?" "Not undesirable, just permanent. Love is supposed to be the big emotion, the one that leads to long-term partnerships and major life decisions." ZYX made notes in its flowing script. "Humans create artificial escalation hierarchies for emotional expression?" "I suppose we do." "And these hierarchies serve what purpose?" Sarah paused, realizing she'd never really examined the logic behind the "I love you" milestone. "I guess they help us gauge the seriousness of relationships. They create checkpoints where both people have to decide if they want to move forward together." "But you already know Marcus loves you, and he knows you love him, even without the verbal confirmation?" "Pretty much, yeah. So the words themselves are less important than the mutual decision to use them?" "Exactly." Sarah felt that familiar flutter of appreciation for ZYX's ability to cut through human social complexity to the underlying patterns. "It's like a formal declaration of intent." "Fascinating," ZYX murmured, adding more notes. "Your species has developed linguistic rituals to formalize emotional states that already exist." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen, which had become a regular occurrence since her sister had appointed herself unofficial relationship advisor for both Sarah and ZYX's research project. "Hey, Em," Sarah answered, putting the call on speaker so ZYX could listen. "Sarah, emergency," Emma said without preamble. "I need your alien friend's expertise." "ZYX's expertise?" "Yes. I'm having a relationship crisis that requires both human wisdom and objective analysis." Sarah exchanged glances with ZYX, who immediately perked up with interest. "What's going on?"
I've been dating this amazing guy for 6 weeks. David, the veterinarian I met at that animal rescue fundraiser. He's kind, funny, loves animals, wants kids someday, basically everything I thought I wanted. That sounds great. What's the crisis? The crisis is that I'm not excited about him. Like, at all. He's perfect on paper, we have everything in common, he's genuinely a wonderful person, and, when I'm with him I feel nothing. Pleasant, comfortable nothing. ZYX leaned closer to the phone, clearly fascinated by this development. How long have you been feeling this way? Sarah asked. Since our second date. I keep thinking the spark will develop, but it's been 6 weeks and I feel less attracted to him than I did to Marcus after knowing him for 6 hours. And, you want ZYX's perspective on this? I want to understand why humans sometimes have no chemistry with people who should be perfect for them. Is it pheromones? Evolutionary biology? Some kind of genetic compatibility issue? ZYX immediately began typing notes. This is an excellent question, it said, addressing the phone directly. Emma sister, may I ask about your physical responses to David versus your responses to Marcus? Go for it, ZYX. When Marcus was present, did you experience elevated heart rate, heightened awareness, or what humans term butterflies? All of the above. Marcus walked into a room and I became hyper-aware of everything, how I looked, how I sounded, whether he was looking at me. And, with David? With David, I feel the same as I do talking to my coworkers or my friends. Pleasant, relaxed, but not activated. ZYX typed rapidly. And, David demonstrates clear interest in you? Very clear. He texts regularly, plans thoughtful dates, remembers things I tell him, talks about future plans together. But, you do not experience reciprocal activation despite his suitability as a partner? Exactly. It's like my brain knows he's great but my body doesn't care. Sarah watched ZYX process this information with obvious excitement. The alien had been particularly interested in the disconnect between logical compatibility and physical attraction since observing Sarah's own romantic development. I have a theory, ZYX announced. Based on my observations of human bonding patterns, attraction appears to require an element of uncertainty or challenge to activate the neurochemical responses associated with romantic interest. Go on, Emma said. Marcus presented uncertainty, his travel lifestyle, his initial involvement with you, Sarah's unclear feelings about him. These unknown variables created emotional tension that enhanced attraction. David presents no such uncertainty. So I'm not attracted to him because he's too available? Not too available, ZYX corrected. Too predictable. Your nervous system appears calibrated to respond to potential partners who represent both opportunity and risk. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. ZYX, are you saying humans are biologically programmed to want what we can't have? Not exactly. I am suggesting that human attraction mechanisms evolved to identify partners who would provide genetic diversity and adaptive advantages. Uncertainty signals genetic difference and potential for novel trait combinations. Emma was quiet for a moment. That's depressing. Are you telling me I'm sabotaging relationships with good men because my DNA wants me to chase after inappropriate partners? Not sabotaging, ZYX clarified. Your attraction responses are providing information about genetic and psychological compatibility that your conscious mind cannot access. David may be logically suitable, but your subconscious has determined that a pairing would not produce optimal offspring. But what if I don't want children? Emma asked. What if I just want a partner who makes me happy? The biological systems that drive attraction operate independently of conscious reproductive intentions, ZYX explained. They evolved over millions of years to optimize for genetic diversity and survival advantages, not for personal happiness or emotional fulfillment. Sarah felt a strange mix of fascination and horror at this explanation. ZYX, are you saying all human attraction is just evolutionary programming? Not all, but much of the initial physical response appears to be biologically driven. However, ZYX added, consulting its notes, my observations suggest humans can develop strong emotional bonds that override initial attraction patterns.
Your relationship with Marcus demonstrates this. Your attraction grew stronger as you learn more about his character and compatibility.
So Emma needs to give David more time? Sarah asked.
Or Emma needs to accept that some biological incompatibilities cannot be overcome through conscious effort, ZYX countered. Forcing attraction where none exists may be counterproductive for both individuals.
Emma sighed audibly. Great. So I should break up with a wonderful man because my primitive brain thinks he's boring?
You should break up with him because you are not genuinely excited about building a life together, ZYX said gently. Regardless of the biological mechanisms involved, emotional authenticity appears to be essential for human relationship success. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her alien friend's growing understanding of human emotional complexity. David deserves someone who feels activated by his presence, ZYX continued. And, you deserve to experience the full range of human bonding emotions, even if that requires accepting romantic uncertainty.
ZYX, Emma said slowly, did you just give me permission to be shallow about relationships? I gave you permission to trust your evolutionary programming while remaining honest about your emotional responses.
Humans appear to function optimally when they align conscious choices with subconscious impulses. After Emma hung up, promising to have an honest conversation with David about her feelings, Sarah and ZYX sat in contemplative silence.
Do you think that's true? Sarah asked eventually. That we're all just prisoners of our biological programming? I think humans have created something remarkable, ZYX replied.
You have biological drives like any species, but you have also developed conscious awareness of those drives and the ability to choose how to respond to them.
What do you mean?
Emma could ignore her lack of attraction to David and marry him anyway, creating a stable but passionless relationship. Or she could pursue someone who activates her nervous system but may be unsuitable for long-term partnership. Or she could wait for someone who both activates her attraction responses and meets her conscious criteria for compatibility.
Choice within biological constraints? Choice that uses biological information as data rather than directive.
Your species has evolved beyond simple stimulus response patterns.
Sarah considered this. Is that what makes humans unique from your perspective? ZYX was quiet for a long moment. What makes humans unique is your ability to form bonds that transcend biological necessity.
Your relationship with Marcus demonstrates this. You experience both attraction and compatibility, but your bond has developed beyond reproductive considerations into genuine partnership.
How can you tell the difference?
Your behavior patterns indicate mutual investment in each other's well-being independent of mating activities. You support each other's goals, share resources, provide emotional comfort during stress. These behaviors suggest pair bonding that extends beyond reproductive strategy. Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest.
You think Marcus and I are genuinely bonded?
I think you have created something that my species would find incomprehensible, a voluntary emotional attachment that enhances rather than constrains individual development.
Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, dinner tonight? I have something important I want to discuss with you. ZYX immediately focused on the message. Elevated importance designation. Possible relationship milestone approaching.
Sarah felt that familiar flutter of nervous excitement.
Maybe. Are you prepared for potential I love you declaration? I don't know. Am I supposed to prepare for that?
Based on my observations, humans who overthink emotional milestones often create artificial pressure that interferes with natural bonding progression.
So I should just see what happens?
You should trust the emotional connection you have already established and respond authentically to whatever Marcus wishes to express.
Sarah smiled at her alien advisor. When did you become so wise about human relationships?
When I realized that humans have solved one of the universe's most complex challenges, how to maintain individual identity while forming genuine partnerships with other conscious beings. Your species has achieved something my people never considered possible.
What's that?
Love that strengthens rather than diminishes the individuals involved. That evening, Sarah arrived at Marcus's apartment with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. ZYX had insisted on providing real-time emotional monitoring via text message, which Sarah had firmly refused. Some moments, she'd decided, needed to be experienced without scientific observation. Marcus greeted her with the warm smile that still made her heart skip after 3 months together. He'd cooked her favorite pasta dish, opened a bottle of wine, and created the kind of intimate atmosphere that suggested important conversations ahead. "You seem nervous," Sarah observed as they settled onto his couch after dinner. "I am nervous," Marcus admitted. "I've been thinking about what I said last night, about loving you and, then, trying to take it back." "Marcus, let me finish," he said gently, taking her hands. "I've been thinking about why I got scared after I said it, and I realized it's because I've never felt this way about anyone before. Not just the attraction or the compatibility, but this sense of partnership. Like we're building something together." Sarah felt her heart rate accelerate. "We are building something together. I know. And I want to keep building it. I want to figure out what comes next, whether that's moving in together or traveling together or just continuing to grow together. But I want to do all of that with honesty between us." "Meaning?" Marcus met her eyes directly. "Meaning I love you, Sarah. I'm in love with you, and I'm excited about our future together, and I don't want to pretend otherwise anymore." The words hung in the air between them, honest and clear and completely without reservation. Sarah felt a rush of warmth and certainty that surprised her with its intensity. "I love you too," she said, and meant it completely. "I have for weeks, maybe months. I was just scared to admit it." Marcus's smile was brilliant. "Really? Really? And, Marcus?" "Yeah. I think ZYX is right about humans being good at this partnership thing. Because being with you doesn't make me feel like I'm losing myself. It makes me feel like I'm becoming more myself." "ZYX said that?" Sarah laughed. "ZYX has many theories about human relationships. Most of them are surprisingly insightful. I'd like to hear some of those theories sometime. Trust me, you will. ZYX considers our relationship essential research data." Marcus pulled her closer, and Sarah felt the perfect rightness of the moment. "Do you mind being a research subject?" "Not if it means I get to be your research subject." Later that evening, Sarah returned home to find ZYX waiting with obvious anticipation. "How did the important discussion proceed?" the alien asked immediately. "We told each other we're in love." "And your emotional response to this declaration?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "Relief, excitement, happiness, and this feeling of rightness, like everything clicked into place." "Ah," ZYX said, making notes. "You experienced what humans term emotional congruence, alignment between internal feelings and external expression. Is that significant?" "Very significant. It suggests your relationship has moved beyond the uncertainty phase into stable pair bonding. You are now emotionally synchronized." Sarah curled up on the couch beside her alien friend. "ZYX, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever wish you could experience emotions like humans do? The whole messy, complicated, wonderful experience of falling in love?" ZYX was quiet for a long moment. "I have been considering this question for months. Initially, human emotions appeared chaotic and counterproductive. But observing your relationship with Marcus and Emma's journey toward emotional authenticity has changed my perspective." "How so?" "You have shown me that emotions are not obstacles to optimal functioning but, rather, sophisticated information processing systems that enable complex social cooperation. Your love for Marcus is not irrational, it is your nervous system's assessment that partnership with him will enhance your survival, growth, and overall well-being." "And you'd like to experience that kind of assessment system?" "I would like to experience the enhancement that comes from genuine partnership. My species achieves cooperation through logic and shared goals, but we do not experience the amplification of individual capabilities that I observe in bonded human pairs." Sarah felt a pang of empathy for ZYX.
Maybe that's something you could explore when you eventually return to your world. You could share what you've learned about emotional bonding. I have been reconsidering my return to Kepler 442b, ZYX said quietly. What do you mean? My original mission was to study Earth's biodiversity and assess its value for resource extraction. But my observations of human emotional and social systems suggest that this planet's true value lies not in its physical resources but in the consciousness and relationship innovations your species has developed. Sarah felt a chill. Resource extraction? My people are facing environmental challenges on our homeworld. We have been seeking planets with compatible ecosystems that could serve as alternative habitats or resource sources. And Earth fits those criteria? Earth exceeds those criteria. Your planet could sustain my entire species while providing resources for technological advancement. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. ZYX, are you saying your people might invade Earth? Not invade. Relocate. My species does not engage in conquest, we simply identify optimal environments and establish colonies where needed.